There is no video game company quite as scummy as the scumbags over at EA, with their obsession over the financially lucrative loot boxes that ruin our games and exploit the psychological health of their consumers.
The cool kids on the YouTubes right now, unless you're talking about Assassin's Creed, and it's microtransaction shammery.
Why couldn't some developers just literally make the same game as Black Desert, release it and not have it be pay to win?
You have the option. You have the option to go with the loot box. Sure. Anybody has an option not to walk into a casino, right?
We've said that we aim to have recurrent consumer spending opportunities for every title that we put out at this company, which means microtransactions will be in every single title moving forward.
Now, nestled into the blob of shitty practices that these little games have brought over to the industry are essentially what are gambling techniques.
You know what would be nice? Is if in the current year we could have a game release with no controversy, no microtransactions, no gambling, no bullshit. Oh wait.
But he also talked about a deeper bond with the product. Nostalgia. It's delicate, but potent.
You know, I often say that I was born a decade too late because I like things that are considered quote-unquote old school. My favorite types of music are jazz and rock from the early 2000s, and it doesn't just stop at music, but movies, comedy, and even games. I love old school games such as Diablo or Knights of the Old Republic or even Legend of Zelda, simply because I believe games were much better back then. Not to say that modern games are bad, in fact on an objective basis they're better in many respects. They look better, they run better, they have better animations and voice acting, they have bigger and more immersive worlds, etc, etc. But I honestly feel like there was more passion and less restrictions on developers back then. Well, at least in the AAA space. Indie developers now have been killing it in terms of making old school games, but with the advancements of modern technology and design. Divinity Original Sin 2, Dusk, Medieval, and Project Warlock are all great examples of this. Not only are they fantastic games, but they truly depend on nostalgia. And I think that right now is the perfect time to do so, considering the age of many of the people that started playing games in the mid to late 90s. And I believe that Ion Maiden and Elderborn both have the chance at doing this as well. Both of these games are in early access, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I don't believe that either of them are worth the price at the current moment, because neither have a lot of content, but I would definitely keep your eye on them. Also, the publisher for Elderborn gave me a free copy of the game, to which I am thankful, and he didn't even ask me to make a video. Hopefully you all know that my channel is self-demonetized, so this won't affect my decision on the game. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's talk about presentation. I've never really discussed this on YouTube, but I'm a firm believer in the idea that artistic is better than realistic. It's not because of the idea that realistic graphics will be outdated within a year, I don't care about that, but it's because to me it's not as appealing to look at. Don't get me wrong, sometimes it's really nice looking at something that's hyper realistic, but I don't play video games for realism. I play video games for escapism, which is why I really like the graphics for games like a Medieval, because it's not like anything you'll see in real life. It's crazy to think that games like this purposely limit themselves to the graphics that were seen nearly 20 years ago, but still look amazing. I mean, Ion Maiden uses 2D sprites, and it's almost as if it doesn't know that shapes can have more than 4 sides. It's also worth mentioning that Ion Maiden is running on a modded version of the build engine, which is the same engine that ran games like Duke Nukem. The build engine is incredibly interactive, even for modern standards, and as I said, it's incredibly stylized, but there's something about 2D sprites that are so appealing to me, but maybe that's the nostalgia speaking. On the other hand, Elderborn is a bit more modern and is running on Unity, which before you say, ew, Unity, it's not a problem with the engine, it's a problem with inexperienced developers using it due to its low barrier of entry and just not doing a good job. There are plenty of good games that use the Unity engine. Anyways, the art style for Elderborn isn't as old as Ion Maiden, but it's still a bit retro. The graphics almost look like they have some sort of clay texture, but I can't quite put my finger on it. They use a lot of solid colors such as purple, red, and blue, and it almost reminds me of a Medieval, but I think that game really benefited off of its pixelated art style because that game is absolutely beautiful, whereas Elderborn is a bit meh. It's still appealing to look at, but it definitely isn't as unique as a Medieval or Dusk. A quick note on the sound design and music. Ion Maiden's is great, especially with the explosions. Notice how the grenades leave a flaming skull behind. I thought that was a really cool little detail that they put in. And on the other hand, the sound design for Elderborn is again meh. Oh, music. I think I found where the bad guys are gonna be. Let's see. Yeah, I knew it. I need to fix that. Especially since there isn't much crunch or impact when you hit enemies with your weapons, it just feels kind of weak.
You play ball like a girl! What did you say? You heard me.
With games like this, the most important aspect is obviously the gameplay, and I'm happy to say that both games did a good job. Ion Maiden is straightforward. Have you ever played Doom 1 or 2, Shadow Warrior, Duke Nukem, or Blood? Well, it's basically that. You get your typical weapons such as the pistol, which in this case is a badass revolver that shoots multiple shots at once, the automatic submachine gun, the shotgun, and these badass little bowling ball grenades that track enemies that take up your explosive slot, and the melee that you should never use. Of course, strafe running and jumping is a thing in this game to help you move faster, but it's not as emphasized as Dusk's strafe jumping. Oh, that's a tongue twister. But it's not as emphasized as Dusk's strafe jumping. Elderborn's movement speed is much slower, but you do have sprinting and dashing available for you. For some reason, they made it to where you do a slow heavy attack after sprinting, which to me is the exact opposite of what I want to do when I sprint up to an enemy to attack them. You also get access to 3 types of weapons in the current build: a short sword, a heavy axe, and 2 little pokey hand things. I'll go ahead and tell you that these pokies are the best weapons in the game, and the game gets a whole lot more fun once you get them because they are fast, do decent damage, and actually stagger enemies, which is something that I feel like needs to happen with every weapon in the game. Every weapon needs to at least stagger an enemy when you hit them, so you can avoid bullshit damage by them hitting you when there's nothing that you can do about it. Also, please get rid of the ledges and little bumps in fighting arenas that your character can get stuck on. For instance, the first quote-unquote real fight in the game has lots of little ledges that your character can get stuck on, and it's just annoying. So let's compare it to the first arena in Ion Maiden. This is a nice and flat area where you never get stuck, and that makes fighting so much smoother. Oh, and your melee range in Elderborn, along with the enemy's range, is much farther than you think it is, so just keep that in mind if you play this game. But yeah, I think that's all I have for both of these games. There's not much more that I can say because both are in early access and only have about an hour worth of gameplay. Ion Maiden also has a pretty fun survival mode, and a mode where you can play through the preview campaign with infinite grenades, which is fun as well. As I said, both games are promising, and if they keep going the way that they are, then I believe that they can be really good. But at this moment in time, they're not really worth the money, unless if you think that they are worth supporting. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this thing. And until the next video, have a good one. Really?